W dzisiejszym odcinku wybierzemy się na krótką wycieczkę do tuneli Cu Chi, miejsca, które odegrało ogromną rolę podczas wojny wietnamskiej. Zobaczymy, jak wyglądały podziemne korytarze Wietkongu, sprawdzimy, jak działały ich pułapki i dowiemy się więcej o historii tamtych wydarzeń. Spróbujemy też jedzenia, które jedli żołnierze w czasie wojny. To nasz ostatni dzień w Wietnamie, więc po wycieczce zrobimy jeszcze krótkie zakupy przed powrotem. No to w drogę! Ostatni dzień w Wietnamie. Dzisiaj jedziemy na krótką wycieczkę na pół dnia do Cu Chi Tunnels. Znowu jedziemy na wycieczkę zorganizowaną, dokładnie z tego samego biura, z którego byliśmy wczoraj na wycieczce w delcie Mekongu. Także nie nastawiamy się za dobrze, bo jednak wolimy samodzielnie zwiedzać, ale podobnie jak wczoraj, z powodu braku czasu wykupiona jest wycieczka, także jedziemy. Może nie będzie tragicznie, zobaczymy. Jesteśmy przy wejściu do tych tuneli. Sprzedają pamiątki, bilety wstępu. Jest też jakaś wystawa z bronią. Podobnie jak w muzeum w Ho Chi Minh, gabloty z bronią, pozostawioną przez Amerykanów pewnie.
Wietnamskie też.
Tłumy ludzi, więc ciężko coś nawet sfilmować w tych gablotach. Mamy już bilety. Koszt wstępu 125 000 dongów.
My family, please divide you two lives.
Najpierw oglądamy film, taki stary, dokumentalny, w sali, w zasadzie w takim okopie pod wiatą. Sam film jest ciekawy, bo są nagrania z tamtych czasów, czarno-białe, ale trochę kiepskie jest nagłośnienie i niewiele właściwie słychać. Ale chwilkę można popatrzeć tutaj.
I would like to introduce to you about two maps right here. Right, so this is the first map. Whenever you take a look at the map right here, you would see the brown line around here. That was the boundary, the border of Cu Chi Land and all the regions in Saigon, the red area. That was the liberated area. But that was the biggest one of United States. We call Dam Yu military base. In order to be easily control this liberated area, that was the biggest one. You got it. And you would see the yellow one. That were the villages of local people. The pink one. These were the conflicted area. Empty hands to dig the land underground. Like this. Now take a look right here. All of the tunnels were made in 3 levels. 1, 2, and 3. Right? Within the first level, it was from 3 meters deep from the ground, and there were a lot of bunkers right here, like meeting bunker, kitchen and dining bunker. This is the thrusting bunker, the weapon storage bunker, and fighting bunker, and a lot of other bunkers for the daily life. But this bunker, kitchen bunker, was very special because can you guess how could they cook underground? Right here, just take a look at the stove. Whenever they cook underground, the smoke of cooking could come out into the tunnel, and the smoke of cooking could come out on the entrance, the lid on the lane. And whenever GI troops they came there, they wore the mask. They couldn't smell anything, and they thought the smoke of cooking could be like, the foggy or the water. They didn't know the smoke of cooking. You got it, my family? And within the second level, right here, it was from 6 to 8 meters deep from the ground. And there were a lot of bunkers, and especially surgery bunker. The bunkers for the soldiers who had the light injury, the pain on their body, right here, within the second level. And the last level was from 10 meters deep from the ground, and there were a lot of bunkers, like surgery bunker. But the surgery bunker in the last level was for the soldiers who had a very, very heavy injury, or even near the death. You got it? And then here you would see the soldiers, they were taking water within the well, and the well were connected into the river system. And why did they construct the well underground? Because TI troops, they destroyed the whole water resources on the lane. That's why they constructed the well underground. And you will see right here, there were the entrance to close up, close down for the soldiers to escape from the river. And these were the place where the soldiers could go to toilet right here. They dropped something. You got it? And inside there were some traps like this. The traps in the tunnels. Do you remember the track troops? They came there, they dropped in the traps right here. Right? One of the 5 ways. And now, are you ready to come inside, my family? Okay, so crater, B-52 bomb crater. They used a lot of B-52 aircraft to drop the bombs, right? But do you know the meaning of the B-52 aircraft? B means Boeing, the Boeing company that produced the bomb. 52 means in 1952. That was the official year that all of the bombs were in use. You know, for every B-52 aircraft, it could hold at least 100 bombs. And for every bomb, it weighed more than 250 kilograms. She's coming down the secret entrance, right here. You know, for the last person, if they would like to come there, they had to camouflage a lot of leaves, the nature, and the mice as well. You know mice, right? The mice around the leak. Because when the troops came there, they opened the leak. The mice would say that boom, to kill the enemy. You got it. But you know, that was not the real one. It was just the motto for the past. But you know, the real one, the original one, was just a half of like this. That's why you are imagine the size of American body was very hard for him to come inside, right? They rented a lot of track troops to come inside the tunnels. Alright, 3 people. Oh my god. That's very okay. Here's my family. Who would like to join us? Remember, my remind. Okay, who's answer first? Yeah, that's right. Very fast.
Okay.
Hey, could be like the soldiers. How are you? Welcome back. Morning. Okay, congratulations. The next one, please. So take a look inside. These were the traps made by our soldiers. Can you guess what were the traps for at first around the jungle? For killing dangerous animals. But later when the troops came, they trapped inside the trap. Now let's see what would happen. Trapped inside the trap. You know, these traps were made from the bamboo. On the top of the bamboo traps, it was very sharp to easily kill the enemy.
Tej pułapki bym nie chciał wypróbować, tak jak tej dziury do chowania się.
The rock looks like the mine, but you know it was the air ventilation for soldiers and the crowd to breathe. Whenever they brought the land from underground to the jungle right here, they make a lot of rocks around the jungle. Then they use a long bamboo stick to make a lot of small holes. You know, these small holes around the rock were connected inside the tunnels for soldiers to breathe. But you know, there were two kinds, the fake and the real one. With the fake one, these small holes were not connected inside the tunnels. And how could we know which was the fake or which was the real air ventilation? If we would like to know it, as long as you come inside the tunnels and you take a look at both, you will see if there were any holes, that were the real air ventilation.
W oddali słychać strzały. Gdzieś tam można postrzelać z karabinu też. Więc co chwilę ktoś strzela. W sumie takiego klimatu to dodaje przy chodzeniu po tym lesie.
Like a fighting bunker. It was just one way, one line. Alright, so now take a look right here. This way leads to the river, Saigon River. And that way leads to another country, Cambodia. From the river to Cambodia, it took about 500 kilometers for the soldier to escape from Cambodia. You got it? But whenever the GI troops, they pumped water inside the train system, one of the 5 ways, you remember? But only 20 meters were destroyed with pumping water. Why it was not flood? The first one because of the clay soil, right? The clay soil. And the second one, whenever they pump water inside, the water could drop by this way into the river. That's why only 20 meters were destroyed. Alright, after him we move to this. Okay, now please. Right here, that was the original tunnels. It was very narrow and very dangerous for you, but after that we made something to cover the entrance right here. Right, the male soldiers, they were wearing the green uniforms, and the female, they were wearing the black uniforms. You know why? Were different. So now take a look. In the morning, the men, they had to come up on the crowd to camouflage into the trees later to fight against the enemies. That's why they wore the green uniforms. What about female? It was, only at night. It was very dangerous for them to come up on the crowd to fight against in the morning. That's why only at night. So, as a lady, the female, you, and you. So, just for example, for the whole day, you were staying and living underground. How could you feel? Very terrible for a lady, right? That's why they come up on the crowd to breathe and to do their personal daily life. Now take a look right here. Some traditional uniforms. The hat, the sandals, trooper sandals, made from the wolves. I will tell you later. Now take a look right here in front of you. That was the real tank of United States. You know, at that time, they managed more than 800 tanks coming around the jungle to destroy the whole tunnel. Okay. This tank we call M41 tank. It weighed more than 23 tons heavy. And there were a lot of tanks left around the jungle right here. And whenever the Viet Cong soldiers shoot the tanks, and it was left around the jungle. This thing was left after 1960 till now on. You know, whenever we left the thing right there, we come so there. They came inside the thing and cut a lot of small pieces of iron, the iron inside the thing. For what? To buy, to get a food, drink, some military items. You got it. Right here, the real thing of United States. Okay, before we come to these were some trucks made from the soldiers to camouflage with TI trucks. Now take a look at the first one, sticking truck. You are Martin, if you let truck in there, what would happen? I love it. All the traps drop into the left, right? But it's just the lowest level. Now we move to the second one, flipping armband. Armband is a part of your body, right? But you drop right there. The trap could be dropped into your armpit. You shout a lot. You put your hands up. Now move to this one. Trolling trap. If your whole body trapped in there, two sides of the rolling traps could thrown away. Like the massage machine. My family, who would like to get massage right here? For you. Alright, the window trap. And the folding chair trap window. Now please take a look. If you open the window in your house, you say hello, right? You open the window trap, you might say hello to the hell, right? Now take a look. The feet strap. Now take a look at the feet strap right here. If your legs drop in there, it was very hard for you to remove, and you bring along to your country. That's why we want the souvenirs for TI trucks. Alright, these straps, take a look right here. They were made from the bamboo. And very sharp, right? Now take a look. In every family in the village at that time, they had to set up the truck behind the door, because whenever the TI troops, they came there, they knocked the door. Hey, open the door. I would give you a lot of money. Open the door. And they use the gun to hold the door like this, and the door would open. But later, the people, look at people right here, they drop the trap inside the whole body of the TI troops. But if the enemy were clever, were intelligent enough, they use their hand to hold it. But they hold this part. What about the skin part? The skin part would be dropped into the below body. In here, military. These were military bunker in the first level. But it was not the real one. Just a motor hub for you to come here to visit. Because you know, in the past, there were no lift house like this, right? Just a motor. When you come there, you will see some activities, especially cutting the bumps right there. You know what happened? They cut the bump to take the dynamite inside the bump to create the new weapons. Like the village, a lot of people were gathering around here to cut the bump together. Now, please make the video. Let's see what would happen. Do you shoot the gun? No shoot the gun? Okay.
Przy strzelnicy jest też sklep z pamiątkami.
Tam ładniejsze były te na poczcie.
Za strzelanie, za każdy jeden nabój, na przykład do AK-47, to koszt około 9 zł. Miałem okazję już strzelać w Polsce, więc tutaj nie odczuwam potrzeby strzelania. Jeżeli by było trochę taniej, to pewnie bym się zdecydował, a tak to niekoniecznie. Tu są sandały, których używali żołnierze Wietkongu, wykonane z opon, które pozostawili żołnierze amerykańscy.
Three to 5 minutes.
Wchodzimy do tunelu,
10 minutes.
20
I will be
metrów.
there to wait for you. Yeah, please follow him, my family.
Dobra, wchodzimy do tunelu, 20 metrów w ciemności,
See
ale
you in
włączę
Cambodia.
latarkę, żebyście mogli coś zobaczyć.
Take care.
Przewodnik mówił, żeby włączyć latarkę, więc może w samym tunelu będzie ciemno. Zobaczymy.
20 metrów. Wydaje się krótko, nie?
Koniec tunelu. Nie był długi. Szybko wyszliśmy.
To było, minęliśmy.
Okay, please watch your hands. Okay, right here. Please follow me.
Nie zdążyłem. Czy tu nie wchodzimy? A, palą ogień, tak?
Okay, now please go. This entrance hour connected inside the kitchen bunker, first level. Now, if we camouflage some leaf around here, we cannot know. Yeah, a lot of leaf around here, and they just float like the foggy, or the
Dlaczego
water.
palili?
Right, okay, get jungle. Especially tapioca, also known as cassava. And after that, we take it off the layers. We boil or steam, right? And now, please dip into this sauce, peanut, salt, and sugar. Yeah, you dip into. The more you dip, the more delicious they are. Try to dip more.
Próbuję.
Według mnie to jest maniok.
W sumie takie bez smaku,
Dlatego słowa
suche. Tak, znaczy takie nie jest soczyste w ogóle, nie wiem co to jest.
mówił tapioka, czyli maniok prawdopodobnie to jest.
Wezmę trochę tego, nie wiem, cukru czy soli.
Ostrożnie, bo wczoraj z soli zjadłem.
To trochę jak stary ziemniak, taki sprzed paru dni ugotowany. Takie, no,
Jest nadzwyczajne.
można zjeść, ale szału nie ma. No ale to jest coś, co z tego co mówił,
Czym się żywili.
że się tym żywili, bo nie było innego pokarmu, także jak na brak pokarmu, to nie jest źle. Wycieczka do tuneli Kuchi dobiegła końca. Właśnie jesteśmy na postoju, już będziemy wracać do Ho Chi Minh. Ogólnie Bardzo ciekawe miejsce. Wiadomo, że nie tak widowiskowe pod względem krajobrazów jak chociażby wczorajsza delta Mekongu, ale jest to miejsce na pewno warte odwiedzenia. Można dużo dowiedzieć się o historii Wietnamu, o tej wojnie Wietnamu ze Stanami Zjednoczonymi, która miała miejsce. Mi się podobało. Tak samo jak wczoraj uważam, że może ciekawiej by się zwiedzało samemu, bez przewodnika, ponieważ można by więcej czasu w niektórych miejscach poświęcić, w innych mniej, bo też były takie momenty, jak chociażby oglądanie tego filmu dokumentalnego, gdzie cała grupa musiała oglądać ten film, podczas gdy niewiele było słychać. Normalnie pewnie spędziłbym tam raptem kilka minut, a tak trzeba było siedzieć 15. Aczkolwiek były też plusy, no bo na pewno nie dowiedziałbym się tak wielu rzeczy na temat historii Wietnamu i samych pułapek, tego jak, w jaki sposób Wietnamczycy kopali te tunele. No mógłbym poczytać w internecie, ale z przewodnikiem też było to ciekawe doświadczenie, więc uważam, że warto ogólnie i polecam taką wycieczkę.
Ponieważ to nasz ostatni dzień w Wietnamie, wybraliśmy się na popołudniowe zakupy. Trafiliśmy na targowisko Qua Bac, pełne lokalnych pamiątek i drobiazgów. W porównaniu do innych miejsc, np. Poczty Głównej w Ho Chi Minh, ceny są tu znacznie korzystniejsze, a do tego oczywiście można się targować. Świetna okazja, żeby znaleźć coś oryginalnego i poczuć prawdziwy klimat wietnamskiego marketu. Podczas zakupów zatrzymaliśmy się przy stoisku z kawą. Wietnam słynie z wyjątkowej kawy, więc to idealne miejsce, żeby spróbować czegoś lokalnego. Cena była nieco wyższa, ale udało nam się trochę stargować. I kupiliśmy kawę, podobno przygotowywaną z ziaren, które przeszły przez wiewiórkę. Po powrocie do domu oczywiście jej spróbowałem. Powiem wam, że jest naprawdę przepyszna. Zdecydowanie warta swojej ceny.
Będę próbował z zupy. To jest typowa dla północy, dla Hanoi. Ma w składzie krewetki, ma w składzie kurczaka, no i takie kiełki się do niej dorzuca. Zaraz zobaczymy. Sam bulion dobry, jest tylko lekko słodkawy na szczęście, także dałbyś, Paweł, radę zjeść, myślę. Bardzo smaczna.
Ceny na lotnisku w Ho Chi Minh są dosyć wysokie i zazwyczaj podawane w dolarach, więc dla tutejszych te ceny to są w ogóle jakieś kosmiczne, bo dla przykładu jakaś przeciętna kawa to koszt nawet $7. Także nawet dla nas są to dosyć wysokie ceny. I tak samo zarówno właśnie te jedzeniowe rzeczy, jak i pamiątki. Pamiątek też nie liczcie na to, żeby coś tu kupować, bo ceny są zawyżone nawet 5-krotnie.
I tak kończy się nasza przygoda w Azji Południowo-Wschodniej. Ale to jeszcze nie koniec podróży. W kolejnym odcinku wyruszamy w drogę powrotną do Europy, a po drodze zatrzymamy się na 2 noce w Katarze. Czeka nas intensywne zwiedzanie, niezwykłe miejsca i nowe doświadczenia. Przygotujcie się na emocje, których nie można przegapić.
Jeśli podobał Ci się ten odcinek, zostaw łapkę w górę i zasubskrybuj, żeby nie przegapić kolejnych. Do zobaczenia w kolejnym odcinku.